The way the weekend started for me was, I was kind of wrapping things up, getting ready for Shabbos dinner, and then all of a sudden, I get the call from Mr. Turki Al-Sheikh, His Excellency, about the big fight coming up in March, Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua. We break that news at around, 4:20 or something like that, and then everything explodes. Last time I checked, the tweet had about 10 or so million views. Couldn't help but notice that no one in the boxing media credited us, which is fine, which is fine. There's a little territorial thing going on, like what the hell is this MMA guy doing breaking news of this stature? But make no mistake about it, my friends, it is happening. Francis Ngannou, who around a year ago, almost exactly to the date, departed the UFC, then, of course, in May, signs with PFL, then gets the Tyson fight in July, then fights Tyson in October, and then waits to see how the cookie crumbles in December, gets the big AJ fight, and it's going down in March. I have a lot of thoughts on this fight, why it feels bigger, why it feels more important, why it feels like more people are excited about this one than the Tyson fight. We're going to get into all of that and more on today's program. Saturday was relatively quiet. There was one boxing event on DAZN, Virgil Ortiz with the very controversial stoppage victory. Tony Weeks jumped in there in the first round. It was bizarre. And then Sunday, we were, our stomach was in knots due to the Bills game. Thank you very much to the Jags. For losing. Thank you to the Titans for winning. Sorry about your luck, Jaguars. My heart breaks. Then watch the Bill game. Then I'm about to go to bed, and all of a sudden Dana drops two pretty massive pieces of news. The first one being UFC 299, which didn't really have to get bigger and better, has now gotten bigger and better. UFC 299 now is, according to Dana White, going to feature a 5-round co-main event fight between Dustin Poirier, El Diamante, and Benoit Saint-Denis. What a fight. And then he also added that UFC 300 is going to feature a very important number one contender fight, as he put it, between Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. He said the winner would fight for the belt. He didn't really clarify if Islam Makhachev's next fight will be against Justin Gaethje, now that Charles Oliveira is fighting Arman Tsarukyan, or if the winner of this fight is in fact going to be the next guy to fight Islam Makhachev. He did say Islam Makhachev a little bit banged up, and that he would return sometime later this year. One hopes that it's not in October again in Abu Dhabi, because then we're getting into a groove where it's literally once a year in Abu Dhabi that he's fighting. So we hope that that's not the case. But let's see. I knew that he wouldn't fight at 300 because of Ramadan. Probably wasn't going to fight in Saudi Arabia, although there was a possibility of that. But Dana said that he's banged up. So those are two big fights. Now I say we kind of assume that those are official because, let's be honest, a lot of these fights get announced, and they're not quite official. So let's see how those cookie crumble. But let's be honest, those are two amazing fights, and you got to give props to Poirier and Oliveira. They could have, made the case for fighting each other as opposed to two up-and-coming, hungry, dangerous, violent studs, and they're fighting those guys instead. Two really tough fights, two really, really, really interesting fights, old guard versus new guard. I love it. In a division that needs some refreshing, in a division that needs to introduce some new blood, where there is a ton of new blood knocking at the door, hopefully we start to see more of this in other weight classes. So in a matter of moments, we're going to be joined from Paris, live from Paris, site of the 2024 Summer Olympic Games, by the talk of the combat sports world. And you have to say combat sports world because it's not just MMA and it's not just boxing, it's both. Francis Ngannou. I love the fact that he got this fight. I love the fact that he didn't take a step back, as some people said, all right, you had a great showing against Tyson. Now go fight Dillian White. Now go fight Derek Chisora. Now go fight Zhilei Zhang, who's no, walk in the park, or a Joseph Parker, or a Joe Joyce. No, he's going from Tyson Fury to Anthony Joshua. And look, I'm not going to do the whole receipt thing. I'm not going to do the victory lap thing. That's done. We now have to move on from that. And that's why moral victories don't count. Now you are a pro boxer. Now you're very much in the mix. You are ranked in the WBC. You can't, moral victories don't count. Last year was last year. Spiking the football doesn't count. I'm not even going to go through, I'm not going through the whole thing anymore. Now we're in a boxing career. And look, you got to give him an immense amount of credit. He is taking the toughest fights possible. He is fighting the, arguably two of the top three most dominant heavyweights of the past decade. He's not shying away. He's doing everything that he said he wanted to do. It's incredible. And this one actually, to me, feels bigger than the Tyson Fury fight, because the Tyson Fury fight, very much in the UK, was criticized, was called the sham, was called, a money grab, all this stuff and more. What is he doing fighting this guy? He can't hit mitts. He's slow. He has no idea what he's doing. He has no technique. This one feels bigger because of what we saw on October 28th. Now it feels like people are taking him seriously. I look at the reaction. There was some talk of Joshua fighting Hrgovic. Yeah, sure. Makes sense in the rankings and whatnot. This is infinitely bigger. This is infinitely bigger than Zhilei Zhang. And it's infinitely bigger not only because of Francis, but also because of AJ. AJ came back after a really poor 2022 and, losing to Usyk twice, and then in the span of like a year or so, and then he comes back and wins 3 fights. Now, I know, Helenius, Franklin aren't the biggest names, but he looked solid, gets the stoppage, gets the knockout in the second fight, and then gets a huge win over Otto Wallin, a very dominant win. Because of how good he looked, especially at the end of the year, this fight feels bigger. It doesn't feel like AJ on the back nine. It feels like the return of AJ. It feels like AJ has found something with Ben Davison, who I think is one of the best trainers in the sport, who helped rejuvenate Tyson's career. And I think it was always a big mistake that Tyson left him. Now they're together, and now people want to see, can he do to Francis what Tyson couldn't do? Anything Tyson could do, he says he can do better. And he wins this fight, and Tyson wins this fight. We could very much be in line for this mega fight that we've been dreaming about since 2012, right? Tyson versus Joshua, or a little bit after the Olympics. So it feels bigger for all those reasons, because we now respect, well, at least the outside world, we always did here, but the outside world, and especially the boxing world, respects Francis because of how good Anthony Joshua looked, because, we saw what happened in October. We saw what happened in December. It feels bigger. And I love the fact that it's against AJ and it's against Eddie Hearn, who were two of the loudest skeptics when it came to this fight, calling it a gimmick fight, calling it a sham of a fight, saying that he wanted to fight top-ranked guys. Now he gets to shut those guys up. How can you not be excited for all of this? How could you not be excited about all of this? And if you're an MMA fan, how could you not be happy for Francis? And how could you not say that, hey, Francis is injecting a little bit of MMA into boxing right now? Because look, when Brock Lesnar comes over to the UFC, he fights Heath Herring, and he fights Frank Mir, and he fights Randy Couture. You know what I mean? When there are no gimme fights, you don't get 20 in a row when you're an MMA prospect. Even like a Bo Nickel goes straight into the UFC. And Ian Gary goes, a couple fights into Cage Warriors, he goes into the UFC. In boxing, here's this novice, as they called him, a debutant, Francis Ngannou, who's fighting Tyson and AJ. He's taking an MMA approach, an MMA mindset, and let's be honest, a UFC mindset into the world of boxing. And everyone in the boxing world is like, damn, this guy is actually putting his money where his mouth is. He's actually going after the big fights. I feel like in doing so, he's putting a little bit of pressure on everyone else to step their game up. And the best thing to happen to Francis since leaving the UFC was obviously his relationship with Saudi Arabia. They have endless pockets, and they want to make these fights happen. They like him very much. They're making these fights happen. And so here we are. He wins this fight. How does he not fight the winner of Usyk and Fury? He loses this fight. How does AJ not fight the winner of Usyk Fury? So it ties AJ to Fury, which is what we all wanted from the beginning. It ties him to that February 17th fight. He's now very much in line. They'll figure it out. They'll make it happen if he wins. And if Francis wins, how and especially if Tyson wins, how do you not give him another crack at Tyson Fury? And if Usyk wins, maybe you run it back with Tyson, but he's very much in the mix. Now, the big question is, what happens to Francis as far as his PFL career is concerned. I asked the PFL about this. They're very confident that he will fight for them this coming year. I still maintain for now that this is all good for them. They've got some big plans of their own next month, which should come out very soon. Don Davis is teasing this on Twitter. Anytime someone talks about Francis right now, they talk about PFL, which I think is good for the brand. And I'm sure they want him to fight eventually. And so let's see what happens there. But it's crazy that on Wednesday we were talking about, what's the biggest story of the year and what was the biggest story of last year. My biggest story of last year was Francis. My biggest story to watch over the next 12 months is Saudi Arabia. And now here on the first Friday of 2024, the two come together to give us this massive piece of news. Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua later on this year in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. 10 rounds, by the way. Real fight, real rules, not an exhibition. We'll count on the record, all that and more. And there's rumors about other big names on the card. Once again, is it going to be Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang? Is it going to be some of the names that we saw back on December 23rd? That is all TBD. I suspect we'll learn more over the coming week. And then, of course, that press conference. And what a sight that's going to be, right? Just behemoths, chiseled. AJ, who it does feel like there's this newfound excitement surrounding his career and where he's at right now. And Francis, who's just an absolute buzzsaw and an inspiration and the talk of the town. Those two guys, that face-off next Monday is going to be amazing. The first one. All right, so 300 coming into focus a little bit more. I want to ask you guys about the two fights announced last night by Dana White. So 299, DP versus BSD. Let's put that one on ice for a second because I want to keep the 300 talk going. Oliveira, Sarukian. Interesting on a couple levels. Charles Oliveira was supposed to fight for the belt. He gets injured 10 or so days before that fight in Abu Dhabi. In walks Volkanovski. He loses. We presume, and he presumed, right? He was on the show about a week later, and he said that he suspects he's next. Well, his next fight isn't against them. It's against the supremely tough Arman Tsarukyan, who, may I remind you both, you may not know this, but on our 2024 mega preview show over on The Ringer, I predicted Arman Tsarukyan would be the 2024 Fighter of the Year, and I also predicted he'd be the lightweight champion by the end of the year. I'm not sure if I thought it would happen this fast. Like, he beats Oliveira. You can make the case that he is next for Islam, especially if he does it in emphatic fashion. Rick, your reaction to this being on 300, and Oliveira taking this fight as opposed to maybe digging his heels in and saying, nah, I'm waiting for Islam because that was the fight I was supposed to have in October.
So one thing just to add, Dana White tweeted that this is a number one contender fight. Now, we've seen, contender fights come and go and people not get those shots, but I don't think there's much ambiguity. If he wins this fight, he is going to fight Islam. Like, I think they will definitely make that fight. And I think the same goes for Charles, honestly. If Charles wins this fight, I think they'd be inclined because they've already booked this again once before. So,
is it possible the ambiguity, by the way, is whether this is Islam's next fight,
yes,
right?
That I think
the winner could
is he going to fight Gaethje at some point?
Exactly.
That I think is the ambiguous part. But I do think this is a number one contendership. Dana White said it, and I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be. As far as the matchup itself, I love the fight on both fronts because I think Charles can't really dig his heels in too much. He has the win over Beneil Dariush, an impressive win, but Justin Gaethje's hanging out there, Arman is hanging out there. This clarifies a lot, right? This clears up a lot of what's going on, and I think it makes Charles Oliveira have a very, 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 very strong case to fight Islam again. I think this is what you need to be able to fight Islam again. So I think this fight makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels, and I think for Charles, this is a perfect fight to get him into that conversation and establish himself and say, I have to be next.
Did he need to do it, though?
I think so. It'd be very easy to just pass him up and go with Gaethje. It'd be very easy, honestly, to even go with Arman, right? He has this rematch for Arman is even further in the past. Charles Oliveira just fought him 2 fights ago. So I think that there's something that can be solidified here for Charles. I think it makes a lot of sense. I have to imagine also, just based on the fact that he's taking it and accepting it, they probably told him, hey, you're not going to just be able to sit out and wait. So make some money, establish yourself as a rightful stamped #1 contender, and let's see what happens. And I think it's for Armin, this is great. Like,
it's amazing.
If it wasn't next, one more, and what better, name to have on your resume than Charles Oliveira if that's the next one, and then you get Islam. So brilliant fight. Like, so, some of these fights make themselves. This one feels like a no-brainer.
Your thoughts, GC?
So I was actually just watching back real quick the video that Dana dropped announcing it. He actually said in the video that the winner will fight Islam when he comes back in the summer. Obviously, things can change over the course of time, but he says that the winner of this will be next.
Okay.
For Islam when he does return. So that's an interesting note. It's an incredible fight. How can you not be excited for this one? Charles is a superstar. Every time he fights, it's incredibly exciting. And Tsarukyan is an up-and-comer. And now if he wins, both these guys actually will get a chance at a rematch with Islam Makhachev. I can't wait for it.
Is there any part of you guys that is surprised that the powers that be didn't push for, or the players involved, DP Oliveira and Tsarukyan BST? I don't agree with it, but it just feels like a lot of guys, a lot of the veterans aren't so willing to fight the younger guys. And here you had two in the same video, the same announcement, where it's like the stalwart, the mainstays, right, fighting the boogeyman. The two guys that everyone at 155 are saying, don't fight these guys, right?
This is how divisions get turnover.
Yeah.
This is how divisions change, and it's about time, honestly. I think this had to be done. It's just too much. You can sit there and wait, and we can get some great fights, because don't get me wrong, Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier, I'll watch it anytime you put it on. It'd be amazing, and I'm up for it. But
I like the freshness.
Yeah, we've seen it.
Oh, I love it too.
And also, again, those guys could go round robin forever, right? You can throw Gaethje in that mix. Now, all of a sudden, those guys are fighting each other forever. We need the fresh blood. BSD, Armin, these are the fights that need to be made. And credit to the veterans for stepping into that position and taking those fights.
Which one you like better, GC? The 5-round co-main DP versus BST, which is just like an insane fight.
It's just like I just don't know how that fight is not. I don't know how either of these fights is not incredible, because Poirier is ready to go to war anytime, and we've seen what BSD has done in his first few UFC fights. Every time it's just fireworks. But anytime Charles Oliveira steps into the octagon, it is chaos for as long as it lasts. It's almost guaranteed we're going to see a finish in this one. Can I say equal? I don't know how to choose between these two. I can't wait for both of them.
So the current lineup as far as announced 300 fights are as follows: Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage, Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling, Charles Oliveira versus Armin Tsarukyan, Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. We'll be talking to him in about 15 minutes. Leon Edwards has said that he suspects he'll be on the card, and we suspect it will be against Bilal Muhammad. So if you want to throw that into the mix, go ahead. Other than that, no real inclination as to the other big fights, the quote-unquote rabbit in the hat, the main event, all that stuff.
Why are you doing quote-unquote for something you said?
No, because now
you are the one.
No, because my
I
specifically said the rabbit was not a main event level fight. I specifically said that it was, a 6 out of 7 on the wow scale. And then, of course, as predicted,
6 out of 10. 6 out of 10.
Sorry, 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6
And of course, it was turned into rabbit in the hat, meaning like, Khabib's coming back, Brock's coming back.
Wait, he's not?
That's what it got turned into.
That's what you told me.
Which, by the way, can I just say something? I don't believe for a second that there aren't multiple rabbits in their hat.
Yeah.
I know of one specifically. I have too much respect for them as matchmakers and as showmen and as entertainers. Like, they know what this is. The same way they got Brock, the same way they got DC and Jones. Remember, John Jones fought in late April. He beat OSP, and then they turned him around and flew him and DC and some others out to Good Morning America and had them sitting there for a fight that was happening 2 months later to headline UFC 200. Like, they make these fights big. They make these cards big, these anniversary cards, right? So they have something. Whether it's going to cut the mustard, I don't know, because it feels like people's expectations are like almost like
outsized.
They
by
have
far.
to have something planned though, because $299 is now so stacked. that like you would think they would shift some of these over to 300 if they were in desperate need of building the card. I think they have some things planned.
People need to manage their expectations.
It's also coming together now. Like you got Yuri on there, you got Aljo on there fighting Cater, moving up to 145.
These are all great
You got
fights.
Charles Oliveira fighting Armin Sarukian. Like Charles Oliveira being on the card is a big deal as well. Like Bo Nickel, of course. I mean, we only have like 5 fights announced, and there's already some massive names on this card.
There's nothing they could do at this moment, in my opinion, like that could make people happy with this card.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of threads that I've read, the amount of this is the perfect card that like would never actually get booked. Like it feels like people will be let down no matter what because of the expectation.
It's missing a megastar, and they don't have megastars. That's the conversation. They don't.
Would you be okay with Izzy versus Alex as the main event? Not
Sure.
you. Not you. Do you think the people would be okay?
No.
No.
Now, when you say okay, look, the UFC is going to try their best. You said it perfectly. The UFC is going to try their best to stack this card. They're going to try their best to put on the best fight possible. They're going to try to make a big splash. They know UFC 300 matters, and that's what they're going to try to do. Ultimately, if they're unsuccessful in getting this crazy thing that everybody is expecting to happen, they're going to put on a great card, stacked top to bottom. Everybody's going to love it, and they're going to move on to the next event and just keep rolling. That is what's going to happen.
McGregor in June, and then
they do
probably
McGregor.
another John Jones fight in the summer, and like the wheels just keep on turning.
They're not upending their whole business for UFC
Sure.
300. It is going
To
happen.
me, it feels like they gotta like to meet the expectations. They would have to have like a wow factor, something that like no one is expecting, and they drop it out of nowhere, and it really makes people say wow, which might not happen.
A rabbit in the hat.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Quote, unquote.
I feel, by the way, I feel like we need to start selling this merch, rabbit in the hat. And by the way, the quote unquote is also like, you know, when I said to Chael about the 10 million or whatever, and then I said reportedly by who?
Yes,
by me.
reported by me.
The rabbit in the hat is reported by me. I was a little bit surprised. DP versus BSD is a perfect 300 fight too. Like it's not like I don't think anyone was saying 299 needs a little extra oomph, right?
Yeah.
Dude, 299. I mean, obviously O'Malley Vera. Now you got DP and BSD in a 5-round co-main. Gilbert Burns, JDM, Curtis Blades, Jailton Almeida, Piotr Jan, Song Yadong, Kevin Holland, Michael Page, Pedro Munoz, Kyler Phillips, Mateus Gamrot, RDA. I mean, you've got some fights
did
on
not
that
need
card.
it, right? You did not
need it.
299 didn't need
300 didn't need it either. Let's be real. Like it's going to be a great card. It's going to be stacked top to bottom.
Like it's so badass.
The 300 is not missing that fight. 300 is missing the top of the bill. 300 is missing the super headliner, and it's just not going to. I don't see how it materializes. I would love to be shocked. I think every fan would love to, but I just don't see how that materializes. So ultimately, 299, 300, throw them on either because both of those are going to be pay-per-views that are tops for the year for sure.
I mean, just right now on Tapology, obviously you just mentioned it, the Leon and Bilal. Just like looking at this, like Yuri Rakic, Oliveira Sarukian, Cater Sterling, Nickel Brunage, if they continue putting them out at this quality for the entire card, it's going to be an unbelievable card.
Do you think there's any chance, or would you like to see them do this, or just based off the tweets from last week, which I have to give him a lot of credit for, Tom Aspinall had a pretty good stretch of tweets there regarding Stipe Miocic.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Big Tom came out strong. It's almost like he had this revelation, like, wait a second, I'm about to get screwed here. Talking about the boxing politics, and here's Big Francis getting massive fights, and I'm being handcuffed by this interim belt. Tom versus Stipe?
I would love it. I don't think it'll happen.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stipe himself said it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think the Tom, he did. You're right. He responded on Twitter, but Tom doing this makes me feel even more that it's not going to happen.
Why?
It feels like I've been trying to have these talks and they're not going anywhere, so let me try the public appeal because I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Tom said he is ready, though.
I mean, I have no doubt. He only fought, like, how long was that fight? 60-something seconds? I know he was
I don't think this will be...
He fought twice this year, and he fought for a total of, like, 2 minutes
last year.
and, like, 22 seconds. Yeah, last year.
It won't be Tom who's holding this one up.
Yeah, and there are some strong rumors that they're going to go back to Manchester in the summer, and you would think that he would be
There you go.
the perfect candidate for that. But I would love to see him featured on a 300 type of card. If only they made that fight in November for the vacant title, and now he could have gone out and fought Ciryl Gane on 300,
He can still fight Ciryl Gane.
defending the interim belt.
Yeah. This is literally what by the way, I think people need to understand what interim belts are supposed to signify. This is literally the case for an interim belt is literally when the champion is injured and cannot defend. John Jones cannot defend his belt. There's no need to strip him. Interim title, Tom Aspinall defends. Against Stipe would be tremendous. I don't think that will happen. Cyril Gane, hey, you want a shot? Here you go. You're a European, there it goes. Manchester, it's in Europe.
Oh, and I was thinking 300.
Oh.
I'm just worried. Honestly, I'm worried about the title fights. If you just look at the roster of champions, there's not a lot of people available to fight.
No. People's expectation needs.
Do you think the fan base will be let down if the only title fight on 300 is Leon Bilal?
I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Yo, man, I think
they'll be let down if it's 3 title fights and none of them feature Conor McGregor fighting a unicorn on a,
You're right.
I heard rumors Habib comes back and takes on Islam.
Oh my God! Can you imagine? Dude, please.
That's the rabbit. That's the rabbit.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that's the rabbit.
Islam. Oh my God! Could you?
Family turned against each other. Best friends.
And then like everyone has to decide. Usman has to decide who he trains with. Umar has to decide. It's a whole thing. Yeah, I love how every video I see is like predicting UFC 300. Like 300 has become such a thing where I don't even know
how I would build UFC 300 a thread.
I don't even know if 200 was talked about this much. I don't know. Maybe was it this debate?
Different era.
Something
that's why.
Magical about 300, man. Special number.
Reminds me of when I used to do the numbered episodes and like I put so much pressure on booking the perfect 300 episode and then I stopped. It was after 400 I stopped because I was like, this is too much pressure. By the way, it's not even the 300th card in UFC history. It's like the 900 or 700 or whatever it is.
By the way, 200 also had John Jones and DC at the top of it. Original, like, you know what I mean? Like, there wasn't. You didn't need to do the whole like what's gonna come because they already had the best you could.
Yeah,
do.
but to my point, they waited quite a while.
I don't remember. I mean, that's
it was end of April. John Jones had to fight OSP. It was, I think, April 25th, believe it or not. And then, remember, he almost didn't make it to the OSP fight because he got arrested.
Yes.
I mean, he was literally in like the orange jumpsuit 2 weeks before the fight in court. He fights OSP 197. This is the greatest stretch in UFC history. I'm going to write a book about this stretch one day.
We're waiting on it, man.
Between March of 2016 to essentially August of 2016, it's the greatest stretch in UFC history, without a doubt. Conor Nate, that's 196. 197 is the return of John Jones in the jumpsuit OSP. On the Monday, by the way, on the Friday before that fight, it's the infamous Nate Diaz press conference with Conor, and there's the empty chair, and Nate says, I'm not fighting on 200 unless he's fighting on 200. Then the Monday after 197, after John has a ho-hum win over OSP, they go on Good Morning America, and it's DC and Jones sitting there, the big rematch fight, which never comes to fruition, of course. So that's 197. 198, Stipe knocks out Fabricio Verdum. 199, Bisping knocks out Rockhold. 200, Brock, all the hoopla. 201, Woodley knocks out Robbie Lawler. Oh, by the way, 2 weeks before that, right after 200, the company gets sold for $4.025 billion. 202, Conor returns. 203, CM Punk and Stipe and Overeem. 204, if you want to keep going, is Manchester, Bisping versus Hendo. 205, oh, by the way, Conor McGregor back at Madison Square Garden. 206 was like, not back, first time as double champion. 206 was the OK one in Toronto. That was Pettis and Holloway, and Pettis missed weight, if you recall. It was supposed to be DC versus Rumble.
Yeah.
And then 207 was Ronda against Nunes.
Yeah.
What did we say we were calling the book?
Highway to Helwani.
No, that's the personal book.
Sweet 16?
Oh, wow, that's a good name. Did we ever talk about this?
Part of the larger book?
No.
Separate.
This is just Helwani's...
His POV of 2016, the most magical year in UFC history.
But why are we waiting? So why is this book not out yet?
We've had this whole discussion before behind the scenes of why are we waiting? This needs to... Let's work up some drafts. We know an author. I mean, we can get this thing published.
Who? TST?
Yeah. He's already working on book number 2. Let's shelf that and let's get Sweet 16 rolling.
Oh, my God.
Sweet 16... The most magical year in UFC history through my eyes.
Through my eyes, yeah.
An original novel by Ariel Helwani.
Do you think we should come out with that first or Highway to Helwani?
No.
Why?
Highway to Helwani when the story's done.
Oh, like when I'm 60. 70.
When you're
80.
in your coastal coffee shop and you got your VW parked outside, that's when you type that one up on the old typewriter.
Do it right now.
216? Yes.
Is it okay if
The year's already happened.
Is it okay if I don't write it and I just like say it to someone?
Yes, ghostwriter.
Yeah. Is that
You know one of
okay
those,
for a
too.
media guy? I feel like that's kind of frowned upon if you're a media guy.
No, you.
What was the last article you wrote?
Who's frowning?
Come on, I mean,
I mean, we had the Substack. We were rolling.
shout out to the Substack. Yeah. Is that how we're gonna release?
Look,
this thing?
you'll
In weekly installments.
you'll do all the interviews. You'll roll out all the video content. You're still part of the process. You just didn't have to physically write it. It's fine. Well,
You didn't put pen to
you
paper,
didn't put pen to paper,
but you did
you're
write.
author of this story.
Forward by
Oh, yeah. Who's the forward by? Dana White.
I'll write it.
Dana White.
Imagine Dana
Conor
White.
McGregor.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
probably Connor, right? The
Has
most
forward by
integral
Conor.
figure in the 2016,
Yeah, 196, 202, and 205.
There you go.
and he became the first double champ, and he's the
Yeah, no. He
biggest
was-
UFC
All right,
fighter.
I'm getting in contact with the publisher.
Yeah. Or Ronda, the comeback fighter of the year that year.
Listen, the bookend for that, the capper on that one.
Or Punk. CM Punk.
Let me do
mean,
the afterword.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
that's how you
Pro-
finish the
the,
book is,
epilogue.
In such an incredible, magical year, there could only be one fighter of the year. Miss Ronda Rousey.
No, it was comeback. It was comeback.
Comeback fighter of the year. Sorry. Could only be one. comeback
Yeah,
fighter.
let me do the epilogue. I'll wax poetic.
By the way,
Me and Rhonda, I interview her, and put that at the very end. I mean, we're talking here.
Yeah. All right. You just got me excited. It is an incredible year. Like, I mean, it was just banger after banger. It really was.
Start writing it up.
By the way, you know what's the craziest factoid about that year? The fight of the year, by the way, the fight of the year of 2016, you know what it was?
Condit
Lawler, which happened on what day?
January.
2nd. The second day of the year in the most magical year in UFC history produced the fight of the year. That's a
Yeah.
crazy fact. 195. It's crazy.
People don't know these things. Got to write it up.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You could get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.